The deafening roar of engines cuts through the pre-dawn darkness over the Pacific Theater, June 1944. Lieutenant James Harker's knuckles turn white as he grips the complex control panel of the XF-13 Phantom, America's desperate gamble for air superiority. His breath fogs the oxygen mask as sweat trickles down his temple despite the biting cold at 30,000 feet. "She's destabilizing again, Control." Harker barks into his radio, fighting the violent shudder of the experimental aircraft. No response comes through the static. Through the canopy, 5 Japanese Zeros emerge from cloud cover, their silhouettes stark against the blood-red sunrise. They haven't spotted him yet, the Phantom's revolutionary radar-absorbing skin doing its job. But what good is invisibility when your own plane threatens to tear itself apart? Harker's eyes flick to the photograph taped to his instrument panel, his young wife and infant son he's never met. Behind him, Lieutenant Wilson, his systems officer, works frantically at the bewildering array of dials and switches that make the Phantom both a technological marvel and a pilot's nightmare. "Jim," Wilson's voice cracks through the intercom. "The cooling system for the stealth coating is failing. If we engage, we'll light up on their radar like the 4th of July. The impossible choice looms before Harker: reveal America's most closely guarded technological secret to the enemy, or abandon the endangered bomber squadron he was sent to protect. As the Japanese fighters bank toward their unsuspecting targets, Harker makes his decision. 3 months earlier, at the classified Wright-Patterson testing facility in Ohio, Project Spectre had been the military's most tightly guarded secret. The XF-13 Phantom represented a quantum leap in aeronautical engineering, an aircraft designed with angular surfaces and coated with a revolutionary magnetite-infused paint that absorbed radar signals instead of reflecting them. The brainchild of Dr. Eleanor Reeves, a brilliant physicist whose theories had been dismissed by the scientific community until the military recognized their potential. "It's not just about being invisible to radar," Dr. Reeves explained to the skeptical group of test pilots. "The Phantom can disrupt enemy communications, gather intelligence, and strike without warning." Her eyes shone with the fervor of scientific breakthrough, but lacked the combat experience to understand what her creation demanded of its pilots. Harker remembered the first time he'd climbed into the cockpit, overwhelmed by the labyrinthine control systems. Where conventional aircraft had straightforward instruments, the Phantom required simultaneous management of stealth systems, radar jammers, and unstable aerodynamics. Its cutting-edge technology came at the cost of pilot intuition. During a night training exercise over the Nevada desert, Harker had nearly crashed when the stealth systems overheated, causing a cascade of electrical failures. He'd barely managed to land, skidding across the runway as sparks erupted from beneath the fuselage. "I can't fly this thing in combat," he had confessed to his commanding officer, Colonel Merritt, in the debriefing room afterward. Merritt had poured 2 glasses of bourbon, sliding one across the desk. "You can and you will. Because the alternative is losing this war." He'd pushed a folder toward Harker. Intelligence reports showing Japanese advancements in radar technology threatening to neutralize America's bombing advantage. That night, Harker had written to his wife, Sarah, unable to reveal anything about his assignment but needing to confess his fears to someone. "There are moments when duty asks more than we believe we can give," he wrote. "I find myself in such a moment now." A week later, Wilson had been assigned as his systems officer. Brilliant but brash, the MIT-educated lieutenant had a theoretical understanding of the aircraft but lacked Harker's instinctive feel for flight. "The problem isn't the plane," Wilson had insisted during their first meeting. "It's that pilots want to fly by the seat of their pants instead of trusting the instruments." Their relationship had been strained from the start, each man representing opposing philosophies of warfare, traditional skill versus technological superiority. Yet in the crucible of accelerated training, they developed a grudging respect. Wilson came to appreciate Harker's uncanny ability to keep the unstable aircraft aloft, while Harker acknowledged Wilson's genius for managing the complex stealth systems. The night before deployment to the Pacific, Dr. Reeves had approached Harker in the hangar, her confidence visibly shaken. "There are still bugs in the system," she admitted quietly. "But intelligence says the Japanese have developed a new radar network. If we wait for perfection, it'll be too late for our bombers. Now, as Harker faced those very bombers' potential destruction, the weight of these compressed months of development, training, and fear coalesced into a singular moment of decision. By the way, if you're watching this video, drop a comment letting us know where in the world you're viewing from. We're always fascinated to see how far these historical stories reach. Jim, we need to decide now. Wilson's voice betrayed the panic he was fighting to control. Below them, the formation of B-29 superfortresses continued their steady course toward the Japanese mainland, unaware of the Zeros circling above like vultures. Calculate and intercept course, Harker ordered, making his decision. But keep the stealth systems online as long as possible. The Phantom responded sluggishly as Harker banked toward the enemy fighters. The revolutionary aircraft handled unlike anything in the American arsenal. By design, it was aerodynamically unstable, requiring constant computer adjustments that sometimes lagged by crucial milliseconds. If we reveal ourselves, we're compromising the entire Spectre program, Wilson reminded him, fingers dancing across his control panel. If those bombers go down, we lose 200 men, Harker shot back. Technology isn't worth that price. Their fundamental disagreement, the value of human life versus strategic advantage, had erupted into bitter arguments during their training. Wilson believed in the greater good, in sacrifices necessary for ultimate victory. Harker couldn't separate the strategy from the faces of the men executing it. As they closed on the Japanese fighters, warning lights flooded the cockpit. The Phantom's cooling system was failing catastrophically, causing the radar-absorbing coating to overheat. Soon it would start to crack and peel, not only revealing them to enemy radar but potentially causing structural damage to the aircraft itself. Stealth system critical failure in 60 seconds, Wilson announced, his clinical tone belying the gravity of the situation. In that moment, Harker received an unexpected transmission through a frequency that should have been secure. Phantom, this is Mockingbird. Stand down. I repeat, stand down. The voice belonged to Colonel Merritt, who shouldn't have been anywhere near this operation. Sir? Harker's confusion momentarily overrode his focus on the approaching enemy. It's a test, Harker. The bombers are empty. The Zeros are American P-40s painted with Japanese insignia. We needed to see what choice you would make. The revelation hit Harker like a physical blow. You risked a $60 million aircraft to test my judgment? We risked it to test if you could follow orders, Merritt replied coldly. Your instructions were to maintain stealth at all costs. You were prepared to sacrifice the entire program for a handful of planes. Wilson's expression shifted from shock to understanding, then to something darker. You knew, Harker accused him, the pieces falling into place. You've been reporting on me. Someone had to ensure the program's security, Wilson admitted without apology. The technology matters more than any single mission. The betrayal stung worse than any physical wound Harker had sustained in combat. As he reluctantly turned the Phantom away from the staged encounter, the aircraft suddenly lurched violently. We've got a real problem, Wilson said, all pretense dropped as genuine alarm filled his voice. The port stabilizer is failing. The heat damage is worse than the simulations predicted. Warning alarms blared as the Phantom began to spin, its experimental systems cascading into catastrophic failure. What had begun as a test was rapidly becoming a genuine emergency, with the Pacific Ocean waiting thousands of feet below. If you're enjoying this historical deep dive, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers and allows us to continue bringing these forgotten stories to life. As Harker fought the controls, a grim realization settled over him. The aircraft that was supposed to change the course of the war might claim their lives before ever facing a real enemy. The technological marvel had become their potential coffin, 30,000 feet above the uncaring Pacific. Mayday! Mayday! Harker broadcast on all frequencies as the Phantom spiraled downward. The aircraft's nose dipped sharply, the horizon spinning wildly through the canopy. We've lost primary hydraulics and stealth system cooling. The backup systems aren't responding. Wilson shouted over the shrieking alarms, his earlier betrayal momentarily forgotten in their shared peril. At 20,000 feet, Harker made a desperate gamble. Cut all power to the stealth systems. Redirect everything to flight controls. That'll expose us completely. We're dead anyway if we can't pull out of this dive. Wilson hesitated for only a moment before executing the command. The cockpit lights flickered as power redistributed throughout the aircraft. The revolutionary radar-absorbing skin, now without cooling, began to crack and peel away in burning fragments that streamed behind them like demonic confetti. With agonizing sluggishness, the controls began to respond. Harker pulled back with all his strength, feeling the airframe groan under the strain. The altimeter continued to unwind at an alarming rate, 15,000 feet, 12,000, 10,000. "We're not going to make it," Wilson said, his voice suddenly calm with the clarity of imminent death. "The hell we aren't," Harker growled, pouring every ounce of his experience into wrestling the damaged aircraft back from the brink. At 7,000 feet, the Phantom finally began to level out, though one wing dipped dangerously as damaged control surfaces struggled to generate lift. The Pacific loomed below, its vast blue expanse both salvation and executioner. A forced water landing in this experimental aircraft would likely be fatal. Through breaks in the cloud cover, Harker spotted the outline of a small island. "There," he pointed. "We need to put her down before we lose what's left of the hydraulics." As they limped toward the island, the radio crackled to life. "Phantom, this is Mockingbird. What's your status?" Colonel Merritt's voice had lost its earlier coldness, replaced by genuine concern. "Your test nearly killed us," Harker replied through gritted teeth. "The heat buildup was catastrophic. We're attempting emergency landing on an uncharted island. Coordinates approximately. The radio died mid-transmission as another system failed." The Phantom shuddered violently, dropping several hundred feet before Harker could stabilize it again. "If we survive this," Wilson said, frantically trying to restart communications, "they'll court-martial us for losing the aircraft." "If we survive this," Harker countered, "I'll testify that the Phantom was fundamentally flawed from the beginning. Too complex, too unstable, too many interconnected systems with no redundancy." The island grew larger in their view, a small, jungle-covered outcrop with a narrow beach that would have to serve as their runway. Harker had only one chance to line up their approach. "Prepare for impact," he ordered, fighting to keep the damaged wing level as they descended toward the beach. The landing gear, miraculously, still deployed, but the right strut collapsed immediately upon touchdown. The Phantom slewed sideways, skidding across the sand in a shower of sparks and shredded metal. The noise was deafening as the fuselage dragged across the beach, the canopy cracking but holding as they finally ground to a halt mere feet from the tree line. Silence fell, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal and the distant crash of waves. Harker turned to Wilson, both men stunned to find themselves alive. Blood streamed from a cut on Wilson's forehead, but he was conscious and alert. "We made it," Wilson breathed. "The plane didn't," Harker replied, looking back at the wreckage strewn across the beach. America's secret weapon lay broken and exposed, its revolutionary design now little more than twisted metal. As they unstrapped from their seats and forced open the damaged canopy, a new and horrifying realization dawned on them. The island that had been their salvation might become their prison, a tiny speck in the vastness of the Pacific, far from established shipping routes or search patterns. And as they surveyed their surroundings, another shock awaited. On the far side of the island, partially concealed by jungle foliage, was the unmistakable silhouette of a Japanese observation post. The Japanese observation post proved to be abandoned, a small concrete bunker with rusting equipment, evidently not used since the early days of the Pacific Campaign. For Harker and Wilson, it provided both shelter and a grim reminder of their precarious situation, stranded on an uncharted island with the wreckage of America's most classified aircraft. "We need to destroy what's left of the Phantom," Harker decided, watching smoke still rising from the crashed plane. "If Japanese patrols find it?" Wilson nodded grimly. "The self-destruct system failed with everything else. We'll have to do it manually." They worked through the afternoon, salvaging what supplies they could and rigging the aircraft's remaining fuel to create an improvised explosive. As the sun began to set, they retreated to the bunker and detonated their creation. The Phantom erupted in flames, its revolutionary components reduced to unrecognizable slag. $60 million, Wilson murmured as they watched it burn. Gone in an instant. Better than letting the technology fall into enemy hands, Harker replied. That night, by the light of a small fire inside the bunker, the two men faced the conversation they'd been avoiding. You knew it was a test mission, Harker began. You were reporting on me the whole time. Wilson didn't deny it. I believed in the program. I still do. One aircraft that can penetrate enemy airspace undetected could save thousands of American lives. Not if it's too complex to fly reliably, Harker countered. You engineers got so caught up in what was theoretically possible that you forgot the human element. A pilot needs to trust his aircraft. And the military needs pilots who follow orders, Wilson shot back. You were instructed to maintain stealth at all costs. Even at the cost of 200 lives? They were never in danger. It was a test. But I didn't know that, Harker said quietly. And next time, it won't be a test. Real lives will hang in the balance. What happens when the stealth systems fail in the middle of actual combat? Their argument had no resolution that night, nor in the days that followed. Survival became their primary focus, finding food, collecting rainwater, maintaining a signal fire on the beach. A week passed with no sign of rescue. On the 8th day, Wilson developed a fever from an infected cut on his arm. Without antibiotics, his condition deteriorated rapidly. Delirium set in, and Harker found himself caring for the man who had betrayed him, cooling his brow with seawater and force-feeding him what little food they had. During Wilson's fevered ramblings, the truth finally emerged. They knew it would fail, he mumbled, eyes unfocused. The cooling system, flawed design. Reeves warned them. What are you talking about? Harker pressed. The test was never about you, Wilson continued, his voice weak. It was about documenting the failure. They needed proof to cancel the program. Too expensive? Merritt was ordered to create circumstances where it would fail spectacularly. The revelation settled like ice in Harker's stomach. They had been pawns in a larger game, a budget battle between military departments, with their lives as acceptable collateral damage. As Wilson's fever finally broke on the 10th day, a new dynamic formed between the two men. No longer adversaries defined by their different approaches to warfare, they became reluctant allies united by the betrayal they had both suffered. On the 14th day, the distinctive drone of aircraft engines broke the island's stillness. A PBY Catalina flying boat circled overhead, responding to their signal fire. Within hours, they were rescued and aboard a Navy vessel heading back to Pearl Harbor. The debriefing was intense and immediate. Military intelligence officers questioned them separately for days, focusing particularly on whether any trace of the Phantom's technology might remain on the island. The official story was already being crafted. A training accident involving a conventional fighter, nothing more. Colonel Merritt finally visited them on the 3rd day, his face haggard with what appeared to be genuine regret. For what it's worth, he told them, I fought against using you as test subjects. The Phantom program has been officially terminated. And what happens to us? Harker asked. You'll be reassigned to conventional fighter squadrons. Distinguished service records, both of you. Combat heroes. And silenced with medals, Wilson observed bitterly. Merritt didn't deny it. The technology wasn't ready. Maybe in 20 years, but not now. The generals have decided that pilot skill and conventional aircraft numbers will win this war, not experimental stealth planes. 6 months later, Harker finally returned home on leave, meeting his son for the first time. As he held the child in his arms, he received a package containing a letter from Wilson, now stationed at an airfield in England. The Phantom taught us both valuable lessons, Wilson wrote. I learned that technology without human judgment is dangerous folly. Perhaps you learned that even the most skilled pilot needs technological advancement. Maybe the truth lies somewhere between our perspectives. One day, Someone will build an aircraft that combines the Phantom's stealth capabilities with controls a human can actually master. When that day comes, I hope they remember our failure as the first step toward their success." Harker folded the letter, watching his son sleep peacefully in a world still at war. The failed Phantom program had nearly cost him everything, yet it had also given him a new perspective on the balance between human skill and technological advancement, a lesson that would shape military aviation for decades to come. In December 1998, over 50 years after the Phantom's crash, a declassified Pentagon report finally acknowledged Project Spectre, America's first attempt at stealth technology during World War II. By then, the F-117 Nighthawk and B-2 Spirit had made stealth a cornerstone of modern aerial warfare, vindicating both Harker's concerns about pilot control and Wilson's faith in the technology's potential. At a small ceremony at the Air Force Museum, the last surviving member of the project, Dr. Eleanor Reeves, now in her 90s, unveiled a modest display commemorating the XF-13 Phantom. Among the attendees was James Harker Jr., accepting a posthumous Distinguished Service Medal on behalf of his father. "My father rarely spoke of his wartime service," the younger Harker told reporters, "but he always maintained that the relationship between man and machine is sacred, that technology must serve the human element, not subjugate it." The legacy of the Phantom lives on in every aircraft design that balances cutting-edge technology with the realities of human operation. Its failure ultimately saved countless lives by forcing military planners to confront the limits of complexity in combat situations where split-second decisions matter more than theoretical capabilities. In the final analysis, perhaps the Phantom's greatest contribution wasn't technological at all, but philosophical, a reminder that in the fog of war, the human element remains irreplaceable even as we push the boundaries of what's possible. If you've made it this far into this forgotten chapter of aviation history, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think today's military has found the right balance between technological advancement and human control? For more incredible stories from the shadows of military history, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Until next time, this is Historical Aviation Mysteries, signing off.